All right, go ahead and pull it out.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting of March 9th. This evening, we are calling the meeting to order, and we will be following by the invocation that will be presented by Councilman Neil Dobler. And following that, if you could please rise if you're able, not only for the invocation, but to follow that, we have the Pledge of Allegiance that will be recited. So with that, Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce Father Tim Habercorn this evening.
Susan, can you?
Father Tim is a Topeka native. He leads services at Sacred Heart Catholic Church and the newly renovated St. Joseph Catholic Church. And I found out Father Tim is one of the newest members of AARP. So, welcome, Father Tim.
This isn't recorded, right? Not recorded, right? Oh, yeah.
You know he has a direct line to Jesus, Neil.
Thank you, Mayor. And let us pray. Eternal God, we ask for your blessings upon our city council members as they come together for this meeting. Grant them the gifts of wisdom, knowledge, and compassion as they discern and respond to the needs of our local community. May all that they say and do reflect your great glory. We also pray that during this pandemic, you may shed your light of healing and consolation to all people. Bring your strength and protection, especially to all those in the medical field, our doctors, nurses, first responders, all public safety officials, and to all who are sacrificing to serve others. Help us put our continued trust in you, and that by the power and source of your grace, you will lead all humanity into the hope, life, peace, and healing that you bring. And grant this through our compassionate and merciful Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, we proceed with the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Valdivia Alcala.
Here.
Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Nager.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Lesser.
Here.
We have 10 present.
All right, we keep moving on and we now go into the appointments. If the clerk would read.
Item 2A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Camille No to the Topeka Board of Zoning Appeals to fill an unexpired term ending December 31st, 2023. Item B is board appointment recommending the appointment of Doug Snook to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a term ending December 31st, 2022. Item C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Michael Bell to the City of Topeka Citizens Advisory Council for an expired term ending December 31st, 2023. Items D and E are board appointments recommending the reappointment of Cassandra Taylor and Grant Sork to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for term ending December 31st, 2023. And item F is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Delmetrius Heron to the Topeka Planning Commission for a term ending September 30th, 2024.
We have heard the appointments. The mayor does not have a vote. I would like to ask what the pleasure of the body is at the time.
Mayor, move to,
We have a motion for approval, and we had a second by Councilman Emerson. this point in time, do we have any comments or questions with regards to these appointments? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, we have approval. Demetrius Heron is here with us today via Zoom. Demetrius, if you could just wave. I was also told that we may have Mr. Michael Bell with us online. Thank you for your commitment to our community and for helping us serve in our community and make sure that we are just ensuring that we have representation from every part of our city. So thank you. All of the individuals that are serving on our commissions and boards. And Demetrius, thank you for making time to being with us tonight. All right, we now move on to the consent agenda. Oh,
No.
yes, Councilwoman Hiller.
I just have, Mr. Bell is on my phone. He was having technical difficulties, so he is dialed in, just not on with you. So congrats, Mike. He said thank you.
All right. Okay, we now move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
Item 3A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period January 1st, 2021 through January 29th, 2021, and enumerating said expenditures therein. Item B is minutes of the regular meeting of March 2nd, 2021. And item C are the applications. There is a list of dance hall applications that was distributed this afternoon, and staff is recommending approval.
What is the pleasure of the body?
Move approval.
Councilman Dobler moves approval. Councilwoman Ortiz seconds. Do we have any comments or questions with regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Council members Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
You're killing me, Smalls, yeah.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser.
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the motion carries. We now move on to the action items. Action item A, if the clerk would read.
Item A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning the Topeka Human Relations Commission amending City of Topeka Code Sections 2.255.030 and 2.255.040 and repealing original sections.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we have for approval the changes to this section of the code. We discussed these at the last meeting, and there were no questions or concerns, but we stand for questions if there are any tonight.
Before we get into discussion, I am looking through my email and I don't seem to find the public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Yes, we do.
Do we have the public comment individuals? Because I don't see the list in my email. I'm looking for it.
I'll text you.
Thank you. City Manager, could you call on the first person while you text me? None on this one? Perfect. Okay. So the council just always want to make sure that we have our individuals have the opportunity to talk with us. So that being said, are there any comments or questions from the governing body for the city manager or for staff? I see none. Oh, Councilwoman Hill.
No comments. I would move to approve.
Do we have a second? Councilwoman Nager seconds the motion. Do we have additional comments or any other thing that you would like to add prior to us going with the vote? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Council members Ortiz,
Am I first? Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser.
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the motion carries. We now move on to the non-action items. Item A, if the clerk would read.
Item A is a discussion regarding the annexation ordinance for property located on the east side of Southeast Croco Road, approximately 300 feet south of Southeast 31st Street, Shawnee Woods, number 2 subdivision within unincorporated Shawnee County, Kansas, and adjacent to the city of Topeka corporate limits, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, this is a consideration of a proposal for annexation. Bill Finder is going to call in. They lost power at a holiday, so he had to adjust, so we'll see if he actually got on. Okay.
Let's give them a minute.
Yeah, downtown Topeka outage, we're lucky we're not off ourselves.
Oh, it looks like he's joining right now.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Fiender.
I'm calling from the bowels of holiday, trapped in the garage. So, am I up?
Yes, you're up.
You are, yes, it is your turn. However, if we need to make some, if you would like for city manager and us to make a quick change in the order, we can do that so that you could get settled in.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere. My garage is locked and power is out, so I'm broadcasting from my car. So
All
I
right,
can't get out
Bill.
anyway. So here we go.
Well, if you want to make it the Bill show, go ahead and talk to us about this annexation.
Okay. All right. So we have an applicant, Mitch Bernard, who has requested annexation for a 23-acre property just on the east side of Southeast Croco, across from Lake Shawnee. The property lies within Tier 2 of our urban growth area. To refresh everybody's memory, Tier 2 means that the property is contiguous to the city and is the next priority for future urban growth and is ready for annexation. He is proposing to build his house on a portion of the 23 acres. He also has a future plat that would accommodate another 35 lots. That is not a part of the immediate plans right now. His immediate plan is to build his house, which fronts Croco, which is, I believe it's about 6 or so acres of land there. So what we do is we go through our analysis, make sure all of services are in place and are affordable. And because it's tier 2, those are usually already predicted to be there. The only thing that is different here, city sewers here, the street is constructed, fire and police are serving and can serve the area that is being annexed. The one thing that kind of is a twist is the city would not provide water service. It is not within our service area for this 23 acres. It is within the rural water number 8 district. And so that analysis was done to see whether or not it would be more beneficial for the city to serve or for rural water to serve. And I know we have, I think Braxton's on the line as well, but determined that it actually would cost us much more for us to bring this into the city service area for water. So we are proposing that it maintains the rural water district service for this property, and overall recommend that this property be annexed at the next available agenda. I'll stand for any questions, and like I said, Braxton is on the line if there's any questions about the water service.
All right, any questions for Trapped Wyandor? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess my question is, why are we annexing?
Councilwoman, can you repeat the question?
Sure, why annex? Why are we annexing? We're not providing water. I'm just a little puzzled.
Councilwoman Ortiz, so we are providing sewer.
Okay,
So that's required to be in the city to have sewer service.
okay. And so if we don't annex, then what? He would have to have a septic pump or?
Well, yes, he would have to, I believe this is in an area that would be required to have sewer. I don't think he has a choice. If he wants to develop it, he's going to have to be on sewer.
I will approve it only because he'll be one of Emerson's constituents. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Wyandor?
Yeah, Mayor, I had one.
Yes, Councilman Emerson.
First of all, I'm really enjoying this corner over here. I think this might be a good permanent change.
Councilwoman Ortiz, those are fighting words.
Yes. No, in all seriousness, I guess my only question is, they're doing a lot of work already at this site. They're already building a building, so how does that work? I mean, is the building being built to city code and they just, did it on spec that we'd approve this? Or I guess I'm a little puzzled about that.
Council Member Emerson, I'm not sure what you're referring to. You mean his house?
Well, I don't know if this gentleman lives in that current house that's on, but no, they've cleared 2 or 3 acres right there and have a huge. And somebody asked me about it. I said, well, that's in the county. That's nothing to do with us. Yeah, that's. I guess I'm surprised they're building before it's annexed.
I've driven by myself. I've seen some what looks to be some pipe work and some grading, but I was not aware there was any building, beyond that. So it's a question. I don't know if they've applied for anything outside of the city. Everything is supposed to be going through the city for permits and approval. So we will look in to see what exactly he has or hasn't applied for, what that work is.
Okay, and I guess my point would be, I don't want to. I'm all for annexation if it brings new, potential new residents into the city. My only concern is I don't want him to get in a catch-22 where he gets annexed, gets this thing built, but it doesn't, and it might already be up to city code, I don't know. I guess, just seems like an odd time to annex if you're in the middle of building a building, but, yeah.
My guess, and I'm sorry I didn't have a look into this before, but my guess, because this happens, is the annexation or the plat or something will get delayed, but they will submit permits and we will review and approve, and we'll approve it up to a certain point. So,
Okay.
Maybe that's what is happening is he's been allowed to do so much up until it gets annexed. And he takes that risk on his own.
Okay, great. And so I guess, Mr. Finder, if you find that's not the case, I guess, would you advise us back to maybe delay this annexation to let him get, so it conforms with his current thing, I guess?
Yes, I will look into this and make sure we know what he's doing and what we've approved or not approved.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other comments or questions? Councilman Duncan?
This is a procedural question, I guess, partly curiosity, partly just to better understand. I know this didn't have to go before the Planning Commission, but it did because of the 10 acres or more. But I'm curious, it went before them in November. This is March. Just curious why 5 months between then and why we get this today.
Councilman Duncan, I know we took it early before the end of the last year. We did not want to bring it to you before the end of the year because of the legal description has to be done by the end of the year to approve, and that would not have worked out. So I know we delayed it to bring it to you till after the beginning of the first of the year. I think we were still waiting on some comments to some of the utility life cycle, and actually I think it was the street cost is if I'm not mistaken now. We were waiting on some of our own comments to make sure that those were finalized. And then I also believe there was a plat that we were waiting to receive from them to show us how this would lay out before we brought it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, this is a discussion item for this week, which means that if there's other questions that come up, or if there's additional information as requested by Councilman Emerson that Mr. Finder has to provide, we could do so in between this and next week before it comes up for a vote. Bill, thank you for your grace and being stuck in the garage and being willing to work with us tonight.
Thank you for hanging in there with me. Appreciate it.
No worries. Stay safe. We now move on to item B of the non-action items. If the clerk could read.
Item 5B is discussion of the proposed 2022 to 2031 capital improvement plan and 2022 to 2024 capital improvement budget.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, we talked in general about some CIP issues and the possibility that we look at taking an increased amount of debt out in order to take advantage of historical low rates, to be able to consider additional capital projects and infrastructure needs that we know exist within our community. I had a meeting with a small group of staff, and we went through and looked at a number of options that we could consider in order to be able to accomplish that. Public Works identified projects that could be moved up or accelerated, along with additional work for mill and overlay projects was considered, as the options were discussed last week about the possibility that some projects, instead of doing the full reconstruction, maybe we would do a mill and overlay and postpone the start of those projects. So from that, we ended up creating an amendment to the CIP, which was sent to you earlier in the week and should be attached to the packet as well. The last comment I'll have is that the city's debt fund is capable of supporting the additional debt if we were to choose to do so. So tonight, Steve will go through and provide you a narrative on what projects were moved where and in the 5-year plan, and where our mill and overlay work is listed in there, so you understand where that amount of money is. Will allow us to improve some streets sooner than we intended and then push out the final work. We also included some additional sidewalk work in the first year. So at this time, I'll have Steve Wade go ahead and go through outlining and give us a narrative of where the changes were made, and then we can have a discussion as to whether you support where we have put the changes within the CIP. Steve?
Thank you, City Manager. I'm going to share on screen the document that you have in your packet. As you can tell from the peach-colored line on the bottom of the screen, the average of the first 5 years of the CIP is just under $11 million, as was discussed last week. Projects of note, and this was outlined in the packet, is an acceleration of the Topeka Boulevard project from 29th Street to 37th Street. An additional $500,000 annually put into the Complete Streets program for mill and overlay projects. Of note with those mill and overlay projects is Southwest Urish from 21st to 29th, Southwest 10th from Wanamaker to Gerald, and Southwest Huntoon from Executive to Urish. There's $100,000 added to the infill sidewalk and pedestrian plan with the intent to build a sidewalk on California between 10th and 12th. We've restored $264,000 to the traffic signal replacement program, added $500,000 annually from 2023 to 2026 into the FIRM program. We've accelerated by 1 year Northwest Tyler from Beverly to Paramore, and added $400,000 into the fleet replacement program for transportation operations. This is for heavy equipment. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Wade? Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wade. I guess a question for you is, is all this being funded by the increase? If we allow that increase, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I guess a follow-up, has there been any modeling done of what this may do? In other words, will this pay for itself by putting off the road construction projects?
Jessica, do you want to handle that one?
Sure, I think that's really a question for Public Works, whether they believe that by doing the mill and overlay, the length of time it would prevent a full reconstruction. Based on the conversation at the small group that the city manager mentioned last week, that was not part of the key points discussed. And I believe that Mark was intending to join this evening, but with the issues at Holiday Building, he's unable to.
Yeah, the conversation I had with Mark was that he saw no issues with these accelerations.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. In the past, in recent years anyway, maybe 10 at least, we have been spending money out of the debt service fund for cash projects that we have planned in the CIP. So in order to bond hire and do these projects that we've just discussed, was anything cut or was that money not budgeted?
Councilwoman Hiller, I can't speak to the time before I was here. The cash projects, when they are budgeted in the CIP, they are only funded in the event there is actual cash. The state does not allow the debt service fund to pay for anything except for principal and interest. But no, nothing has been cut.
Okay, I mean, what we had done was planned it, and then I think that state law allows that if there's no other need for it that year, you can use it. I think that's how we did it.
Well,
Just checking.
The state law would require us to, I believe, pay off all of the outstanding geo debt before it could be used for another purpose.
Jessica, is that under the system that we used related to the short-term debt that we issued in order to be able to do some of those projects?
Yes. So if the governing body remembers, at the end of 2019, we, you all approved an internal note where essentially one fund made a loan to another fund, and that allowed us to use surplus generated by closing projects in the debt service fund to pay for some capital or cash funded projects, but those are not, I don't think, what Councilman Hiller is referring to.
Okay.
Well, we actually anticipated it, looking at the debt service and the projections on the requirements for debt service and the the income that was expected to that fund and planned it. I was never privy to exactly how the transactions occurred to get that done, but I know that we did it, and we had moved to budgeting more for cash, so I just wanted to inquire.
Sure, yeah, we just, the state law doesn't allow us to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I get, I was trying to locate it earlier today. Can I get an explanation from Public Works? Where are we at? Where is the progress or the program at for the 17th Street from the I-470 overpass to Wanamaker, where we have the failed concrete?
We can. I think it's on, it's on this list. Let me see if I can figure out, unless Steve remembers exactly where that 17th Street project is. I know that we're continuing to make progress in doing that project. Just let me figure out exactly where it's at.
I only ask because I've recently gotten actually several emails from motorcycle riders just now
Yes.
in regards to the safety of the.
Let me look. We'll find it. I'll get you an
Okay.
update. But I know that that project continues to be on the to-do list and is in the budget.
That's all I had, Mayor.
All right. Anybody else? I know that we do have Mr. Ledbetter signed up for public comment. While others take questions, I'm sure that the body would be in agreement of calling Mr. Ledbetter up to the podium.
Bathroom break.
Thank you, governing body. Speaking on CIP discussion, I spoke last week as well. I didn't have time to go through the 234 pages that I would have to download this time. But I did send an email that, and this does concern CIP, that I believe it's time to look at selling off our parking garages, or at least some of them. I really don't want to keep spending CIP money on them. I think it's a good time to look at other options with those buildings. Another thing that I, of course, support the Pope Quincy Viaduct CIP in this. You mentioned buying heavy equipment. I don't know what you're talking about buying. I think you should give brief summaries of those kinds of things. But I know Public Works contracts out a lot of its work, so that kind of raised an eyebrow to me when I heard that. One of the big concerns I've got about CIP budgets, and it's been ongoing for several years, so I just quickly want to get into this. We keep passing CIPs, and then 5 years later, the projects are done. and with no additional review, no scope, no look back as to what we originally told those residents along 12th Street we were building, or what we told Parks and Rec we were going to sink this crater into Gage Park. None of that is in any of those notes. When you look back, it kind of reminds me of the politician a few years back that said, well, just pass the bill and then we'll find out what's in it. Remember that one? And that's kind of what this process reminds me of, because it's archaic and it's dysfunctional and it's disjointed. When the county does CIPs, and they actually do those now, they bring those projects back before they let them. Another thing I would like to see when you do that, and I do hope you start doing it, it's got to be done for due diligence and doing your fiduciary duties. I'd also like to see bid documents attached to make sure these projects were actually bid according to our ordinances. And those could be summarized. We get those over at the MTA when we have projects that are bid, and they're a lot smaller than the scope of what you're talking about. But we get bid documents, summaries, who bid, what the prices were, and who won the bid. I think it's very effective and very needful for a board, and that is what you are. You are a board of directors. And so I'd like to see this whole process. I know you got an email from another individual. I saw it talking about make the CIP, vote on it, but then as these projects are come back before to be let, you bring them back to this governing body and make sure that this is what you asked for. And this is what was really intended for in those CIP documents. And remember, things can change. I mean, you may not need a CIP project 5 years out that you thought you needed. So you need that flexibility to do these in a real-time situation, not guessing who's going to do this 5 years from now, but actually bringing it back before this body, having the discussion, and then approving the contract or the project as you choose to do. But we need that oversight. In fact, I'm telling you, you've got to have it. I'm shocked that we got away from that oversight, but it's time to get it back. And these CIPs should not be a recipe for what we're going to do 5 years from now without those council people or mayors or whoever those people are reviewing them and approving them. And that's the end of my comments on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. You need adjustments to your master. It's falling off.
Okay. I'll buy a new one.
Additional comments or questions on the CIP? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. Along the lines of Mr. Ledbetter's comments, actually, last year when we passed the CIP, and if I'm putting you on the spot, give yourselves a week or so, but we created the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee with in mind to kind of get a start on the council's, at least a committee of the council, spending a lot more time on projects and screening the to-do lists that are rolling out of some of these block amounts of money. Has there been, forgive me if I didn't read your minutes, discussion about a recommendation for simply continuing that, dropping it, raising that bar a little bit for next year?
Councilman Vogler?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. Well, we did make the committee permanent earlier this year, so that I think we continue to work within the parameters of the ordinance that was passed last year. So as of yet, we have not lowered the limits or changed. Again, it's the half-cent sales tax projects, it's the geo-bonded facilities, fleet, and I guess facilities and fleet projects. So it doesn't include all of them, but I think we made some good headway. I guess I'd ask Councilman Emerson or Lesser or
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. Thanks.
Please, Councilman Emerson.
Yeah, I would agree, although I still, I guess I should speak for myself on this. still there's just so much thrown at you. You still don't feel like maybe you got a granular idea of, of everything. And I remember in the good old days or the bad old days, when we bid on a contract, that contract would come in front of the governing body. I remember, because I was very interested in, if it was something I was low on, getting awarded. But that added so much time, to every project and stuff, just that whole process. So I think it's trying to find the right balance of, as Mr. Ledbetter said, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to oversee these things, as well as though not gumming up the progress or the process so much that it slows everything down. So I don't yet, frankly, I don't know if we're there yet, but I think we're headed in the right direction.
Other comments or questions with regards to the CIP item?
Here, me.
Councilman Duncan.
Well, I believe this conversation started off with a question from the city manager that I'm not sure we've actually addressed, and that is, they've presented us a difference of, are we willing to have a discussion or giving them direction to move forward with from the $9 million threshold to that $11 million threshold? And I know last week I sort of threw that first grenade out there by asking that question of, have we looked at the bond rates and have we thought that through? So I guess I'll go out on my limb tonight and say I still hold to that question, and I guess I do look at this and say I don't like to borrow and I don't like to bust our own thresholds, but I just, looking at what the rates are, looking at what the future could hold on what those rates could be, if we all, knock on wood, the economy does go back, they will start increasing those rates. Historically, that's what happens. And so I mean, I guess from this chair, I'll tell them that I'm okay with having them move forward and look at that $11 million versus the $9 million for that few year period that they've presented to us. So there's my 2 cents on what we sort of asked them to fill in there tonight.
That's great feedback. This will come back next week as a reminder for us to bring it up to a vote. But I mean, this is the time for you as council members to ask all of these questions. Or like Councilman Duncan said, just let the governing body know that you would be amicable to allowing the addition and threshold of the 11 million. So if there is nothing else, I want to make sure that all of you know that, again, this is a discussion item. Ms. Lamendola and Mr. Wade are available, as well as, of course, City Manager, principally, to answer any of your questions or to route those questions or comments to Ms. Lamendola, so that she can then do her magic and give us the information that we need. Again, this is another item that will come back to us next week. If there's no other comments, thank you to our staff for being here and presenting to us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, we now move on to the public comment section of this evening. The first person signed up for public comment is Ms. Leslie Frange.
Can I take my mask off? Great. Hi, my name is Leslie Frange, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to go off on a tangent because I can't. I only have 5 minutes or 4 minutes. I've lived in Topeka since 2004 when I came to work for the Hills Pet Nutrition. I've worked at Hills for 14 years. I retired in 2018, and I immediately incorporated my business, and later that year I purchased a building on 17th Street. In 2019, I began the renovations on that building. Some of you were at the groundbreaking. In May of 2020, once the work was completed, I opened 1011 Care Pet Nursing Hotel on 17th and High. We take care of special needs pets. Obviously, the pandemic was in full swing. I opened anyway in the hope that people who were working from home would still need care for their pets, and that people might do some car rides and need some overnight boarding. Not so much. So we pivoted, which I know that's a big popular word these days. So we pivoted and we took on grooming. We were supposed to do grooming, but that was supposed to represent 10% of our volume based on our marketing and business plan. Now that represents 90% of our volume. And if you know anything about grooming, it's not the moneymaker that overnight boarding and daycare, et cetera, are. I'm here today because I, along with several Topeka entrepreneurs who followed our dream and had to open during the pandemic, now find ourselves struggling and holding on by our fingernails. We applied for the $25,000 city grant that is backed by HUD, but we were denied. We were denied because we were told we weren't eligible. Why? Because we were not open before March 1 of 2020 and thereby cannot provide financials showing robust 2019 sales versus 2020, where you would have a negative impact of the pandemic. Can't imagine anyone in this room that wasn't impacted in some way, shape, or form by the pandemic. The last time we had something like this, it was 100 years ago. This is a once in a lifetime, praise God, that will ever happen to us. I know that there are rules and regulations, but COVID busted those rules and regulations. This is not ordinary times. These are not ordinary circumstances. And I'm here today asking you to find a way to think more creatively. I can help. I was the director of innovation for 14 years at Hills. I know how to do things differently. If you know anything about a pet nursing home taking care of special needs pets, you'll see that there's nobody else that has that. We're unique, and we're the only ones in the United States, and it's here in your town, our town, Topeka, Kansas. So I'm asking the city council and the city manager to get creative. Pick up the phone and call HUD. I did. I called HUD, Senator Moran helped me, and the letter that they sent back, in my view, says that, can I have one more minute?
You have a minute.
Okay, says that it's really in the will of the city that they can change the decisions that they make on this grant. I'm not the only one that this impacts. There are at least 15 other businesses that opened during the pandemic, and I think we need to think differently. We need to look at different metrics, different ways of making us eligible to get this $25,000 loan. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. The next person signed up to speak is Arian Anderson.
She emailed, canceled. Well, we got an email that said she was canceling, I thought. Do not see the mayor.
Okay. Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Thank you, governing body. I'll just take it off. Tonight I want to talk about a topic near and dear to all of our hearts, code enforcement. I've been talking about this topic down here in this sacred hall for 6 years, since 2015. Some of the progress I've seen is White Lakes, it's still not demolished, still same problems. And when I filed a CORA, I found out that they'd only had one admin fine against them in 5 years, even though the case has been ongoing with no resolution. We have property at 45th and Topeka that's owned by the city of Topeka, has not been bush hogged, has not been mowed. We've owned it since 2003, according to my research. I'm not going to blame everybody in present management for this. Some of these problems preceded some of the current people, but you know, when you take a job or you take a department, you should be looking at all the problems and then you should be solving them on some kind of decent timeline. I've got a house down the street from me that I get to look at the last 4 months. Been absolutely a disaster on Beverly Court, still not solved. Out-of-town owners, as usual. When you find out, you do any research on any of the harder to deal with properties, you usually find out that they live out either outside the city and the county, which this one does, or they live in other counties. But they don't seem to have any pride in this community. They don't seem to care. They run down property values, which affects our tax base, affects our population, and as I'm told, code enforcement is one of the reasons that we are losing population. And I've had that from multiple sources. So we're not dealing with the problem, so I've got a solution. Years ago, I look back, this department was run by the county. The prosecution was handled by the DA. We've got a good DA. I think we need to start the talk about county. Maybe it's time for you to do the code enforcement again. You used to do it under the health department. And let's get it transferred. Let's have that talk. Let's have that discussion. I think when people see the seriousness of being served by the DA for their for these slumlords, they are the ones that annoy me the most, because I know they make tenants suffer. I know that they don't care about their neighbors because they're not neighbors. They live in other parts of the county or they live in other counties. People, they don't care. So, that's a minute. I think it's time to at least start the discussion. I've been thinking about this, thinking about how could we reform this? How could we reorganize this department? Could we get some new leadership? Could we do this? Could we do that? And nothing seems to work. So I know that worked because people do not want a misdemeanor charge for not maintaining their houses in Topeka or their commercial properties, which many of these people own commercial properties. So I think it's time to, as this lady said before me, think outside the box. Let's come up with some new ideas. I just did. Even though it's an old idea, I think if we actually follow this through and actually have a serious discussion about it, this might just work. And then those out-of-town slumlords can help pay for the prosecution with their taxes, because it'd be countywide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Lazone Grace. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the City Council. Thank you in advance for your time. I shared with you some copies of what I wanted to go over. And I wanted to first reflect to the article that it was referenced off of that dealt with the $314 million housing study. And as I read through the article, what popped out at me, the way that I think, is what Mr. Feander had stated, that dealt with the poverty and especially the Black households having the highest rate of unemployment at 10.1, which is almost as high as Hispanic and white households combined. He has stated that while they can do the work to address the housing needs, others will have to address the income disparities. Stated that the city doesn't have the resources and don't have the capacity to provide the type of programs needed to do more, and that there needs to be a collaboration between city departments and community to address affordable housing issues, but I think that that also means to address these other specific problems as well. And this isn't the first time numbers like this has come up, and it's not the first time I've come to speak to the unemployment and income disparities of the Black Topeka population. It seems that we're at a time to try to move forward and do things different. I've tried to lay out, some names on there, and like to see that, I think that on the form I'd use a task force, but I think maybe a focus group is more appropriate. That would be convened to sit and get a handle on making recommendations to address these particular problems. The city doesn't have the capacity. It's not their job, it's not their resources. So I'm just taking the information provided by city staff. I think that if crime was twice as high in a particular district, that something would be done. If water was making people sick twice as high in some district, in another district, something would be done. I think that this is on the same board on why is this persistent, especially when there's growth and there's other things that are going on. So I would hope that, as I have lined out here, that the city would take an active role in getting the city departments and the right organizations together to sit, discuss, and come up with recommendations that could be presented to you all. I had the city manager, the deputy city manager. There's already people in place like a community engagement person for the city to give us a chance to express what we believe needs to be done. Maybe out of the recommendations, nothing will be good. But to just say nothing after 4 months of this coming up here, I was waiting for anyone else to come up and speak to this. No one has. So I hope, just as the Mayor Wogas had did with his neighborhood summit and created a task force to look at specific things, that the city would also do something to set, whether you call it a task force or focus group, where we can look at these problems that I've identified and come up with recommendations to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Lazone. I do want to give an opportunity to see if Ms. Ariane Anderson has made it into the room.
She messaged earlier that she canceled.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, the announcements portion of the evening, City Clerk.
For the March 16th preliminary agenda, there are 3 board appointments. The consent agenda includes routine items. For the action items, items A and B is the ordinance and corresponding resolution for general obligation bonds, Series 2021-A and 2021-B. Third action item is a resolution, the 2022 budget priorities. And there are 2 non-action items. The first is a discussion amending TMC chapters 2.30 and 2.35. And the second non-action item is a discussion, which is the proposed 2021 through 2030 capital improvement plan utility projects.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one announcement tonight, and that is that we have another pop-up COVID sign-up event going on Friday, March 12th from 9 a.m. to noon in the Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging, 2910 Southwest Topeka Boulevard. That's it.
Councilman Vogler?
Nothing, Mayor.
Duncan?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 things this evening. The first, which I think I put out earlier and I believe was on KSNT tonight, relates to the after midnight license that the city of Topeka currently has. Small businesses who are open between the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Are required to get that license to let us know that they're open. I guess this will serve as my official request this evening to the city manager that a discussion of that, of repealing and that be put on next week's agenda for discussion, with the hope that we can take it up at our first meeting in April. This started with a conversation I had with a constituent who I also happen to go to high school with, because, you know, we all still live here. And from that, they have to get this license, and we started talking about its purpose and what it really meant to the city. And so I sent an email to the city manager and to the deputy mayor and said, hey, I have this idea, and got great information from staff and good support from the deputy mayor, who said, heck yeah, we need to take a look at this thing. Why not? Essentially, it's a $40 permit. businesses are required to get it every year. The reality is a lot of folks don't get it, and that's fine. We don't need to spend resources chasing those people down. But the folks who did get it, that number keeps dwindling. And so it really doesn't generate a lot of revenue, and I think it creates a lot more work. So what I will ask this body next week is to look at the information, and hopefully we can get that thing pulled off the books. It made sense many years ago, and I just think its time has come. So I will make that request that we can get it on that agenda and then have a nice discussion about it a week from today. The second thing is, I also want to put out to the city of Topeka, but my constituents also, that beginning next April 3rd, Saturday, I will start holding what I call open office hours for residents in my district, the first Saturday of every month from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the third Thursday of every month from 5 to 7 p.m. over at Fairlawn Plaza Mall. Courtesy, I called Randy Austin. I said, I need a space somewhere that's easily accessible. What do you got? And they have an information kiosk in the mall area there. And he said, man, sure, you can come over there whenever you feel like it and talk to people. So, you know, some days I may get no people and some days I may get a 10 or 100, depending upon what wonderful issues we decide to take up every week. But I try to be very active with everyone in my district. And so it's just another way I hope we can add to keep conversations and communication open. So with that, thank you.
Councilman Lesser? Councilwoman Hiller?
I don't have any subjects. Councilman Duncan will get you an advice 5 cents sign so that lots of people will come. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. Oakland folks have been having quite a bit of concerns about speed, a lot of speeding going on in Oakland, people going through stop signs. And so just wanted to remind them again that March 15th is the PWI meeting where Neil and folks have agreed to have a presentation where we'll look at stop signs, speed zones, et cetera, in addition to Oakland. So folks, the meeting is at 2 p.m. on March 15th. It's in the Cyrus K. Holiday Building, first floor, first room to your right, or you can check it out on the Facebook City Government Facebook page. I think it would be live on there as well. And then on March 28th, to let Oakland folks know, and hopefully we'll be able to move this into North Topeka quite soon after that, March 28th at 2 p.m., which is a Sunday, I will be having a public meeting in the Lundgren at 1020 Northeast Forest in the Lundgren School Building in their gymnasium. It is a huge gymnasium, so we'll be able to do social distancing. Also, masks will be required. And the topic, again, topics are one that continue to come up in the Oakland community concerning the number of drug houses and drug dealing that many residents feel are going on in their neighborhood and are very alarmed and upset with the lack of response. So I wanted to remind Oakland folks about that. Everybody bolt everything down because it's going to continue to be windy. Don't get blown away, and looks like we might get some rain. So everybody stay safe. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz? Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mayor. Two quick things. First of all, and I'm going to murder this name. I'm sorry, but Mrs. Frange. Okay, Frange. First of all, I appreciate your investment in our communities. And I know this has been if you were to pick the worst possible year in the last 100, this is it. So I'm sorry you're going through that. I guess I would ask, I'm very interested that you evidently have a letter from HUD and maybe Senator Moran as well, saying that the city has some latitude. And I guess I would ask if you could possibly get with our city manager, please, and provide him, maybe he already has it. Because I'll tell you, as you mentioned, I know there are a lot of businesses. There's one in particular in my district I've tried to help, and they're under exactly the same situation. And I do think, I know Mr. Finder went back and he kind of went to bat and tried to do some things. And he was told no at that point, but, we can keep asking, and especially if you have, you only have to be told yes once. So, so yeah, so if Mr. Trout could please follow up, I'd really appreciate that.
I will.
Second, I just wanted to thank Mr. Tony Trower in the Street Maintenance Department. He has an unfortunate first name, but a fantastic guy. And last night, had an NIA meeting in my district, and I was made aware of an issue with a couple traffic lights that weren't working correctly. And I was sat in my office this afternoon and got a call from him, and he said, hey, what was it doing? And they had a crew out there looking at that. And I know Mr. Trout passed that on, so I really appreciate the quick service and turnaround on those things. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, to follow up on some of the comments from Mr. Ledbetter, I know that our Chief of Staff has been very busy. I think he will have an update with regards to that property out at 45th and Topeka. Hopefully, by the end of this month, that issue will be resolved. So I'm pleased to hear that. Secondly, I want to follow up with what Councilman Emerson just spoke to, and I think the task force that Councilmember Lesser sits on as well with that small business task force, I think those are the kinds of issues that I'm sure that you and Commissioner Mays are looking at, and how to look at those different ways and options to help those businesses who fall through the cracks. So I appreciate your work there. The last thing I'd like to say, and I want to pay public tribute to a very good friend of mine, Darrell Eugene Everett. You may or may not have seen his obituary. When I started my career, he was at the police department. He was my second sergeant, and I worked in his squad. And if you ever wanted to find a role model for a police officer, he was it. He had the biggest heart, and he was as fair as any man could be. And believe me, if we want to look at our police department, we need to look at people like Darrell and who he mentored through his career to bring up, because he was the epitome of a city servant. His passing came as a surprise. His service will be this Saturday, and I will be there with others. But I just think a person like that deserves public praise for a life well lived. And I just wanted to bring his name and bring it to the attention of the public. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for that tribute. Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to wish a happy belated International Women's Day to my fellow governing body members. I also want to send my thanks to Councilman Emerson for saying something. Leslie, please do follow up with the city manager. I haven't been as much help as I would have hoped that I could have been. And so I hope that we can find some more answers at this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. At this point in time, we do have to recess into an executive session. If the city attorney could please read the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 60 minutes to discuss upcoming employer-employee negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B3. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Chief of Staff Bill Cochran, Administrative and Financial Services Director Jessica Lamandola, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Interim Police Chief Brian Felix, Fire Chief Craig Duke, Senior Assistant City Attorney Catherine Walter, Budget and Performance Manager Stephen Wade, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
All right, we have heard the parameters. Is there a motion to enter into such executive session?
So move.
Councilwoman Nager makes the motion, and a second by the Councilman Emerson, I think.
Lesser. Yeah.
Okay, Lesser.
Megan Emerson.
Sorry, I didn't see it, so I had to guess my voice. That being said, we proceed with the vote.
I know, it's comfortable too.
Council members Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser.
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, we will recess into executive session. I will grant 5 minutes to the council to stretch out, get a break, and come back. The expectation is that this executive session will start at 7:17, and it will extend for no longer than 60 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. The executive session has concluded. No action has been taken. Being that there is no other items in front of the council, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.
Bye, guys.